Political conservatives have long complained about Hollywood and American pop culture. Go back to the 90s, you had Republicans arguing that sitcoms like Murphy Brown were undercutting traditional family values or the role of fathers because of a fictional portrayal of a single parent as a choice. These days, we have other complaining that's been rebooted for Disney or even M&M's. Conservatives saying that there's an alleged kind of wokeness, that liberal agendas are being woven into what sometimes seem like random topics, even candy. Now you have MAGA conservatives who want to actually use federal power to control culture more, and sometimes even history itself. Now, Republicans now have a party that's organized itself around a leader who came from inside entertainment. Trump was best known as a reality TV host, eager for any movie cameos and TV show cameos like you see right there. This unbridled second-term Trump is going after culture, trying to reshape the leadership of the Kennedy Center. That itself has drawn protests from artists and past honorees. Trying to defund PBS by alleging that it has bias. That was in a new order this week, which follows attacks on funding for the arts at the National Endowment. And then there's America's iconic Smithsonian. That's the Washington building there, a huge tourist attraction. It's a nonpartisan bastion of American learning. It's now been targeted in a Trump order that claims to combat materials that the Trump administration deems to be improper ideology. Now, this is not just one more thing about scoring political points. I'm going to show you the evidence of why this actually is important, because it looks like a wider effort to corrupt and shape history itself and what's in Americans' minds. Again, by the government. The Trump order talks about its view of truth and sanity for American history, and then it gets specific. So let me show you what they say. Then you can use your mind to make up your mind. They critique a Smithsonian exhibit about race and American sculpture as, quote, divisive because it portrays American values as inherently harmful, critiquing the exhibit for stating, quote, the U.S. has used race to establish and maintain systems of power and disenfranchisement. Okay. It's a historical fact that U.S. systems, from slavery to Jim Crow to voter suppression, have maintained racial systems of power and disenfranchisement. That's what happened. That's the history. And we're talking about museums where you have historical artifacts. And that's the example that Trump folks came up with. That's what they want to rebut. It's very telling. The Smithsonian work, of course, it goes on. They're curating exhibits for what are sometimes millions of visitors a year. And they're honoring cultural icons with the Great Americans Medal. Tomorrow, director, filmmaker, and writer Ava DuVernay will be honored there as well.
It is unacceptable that they use their power to keep us voiceless.
We are in search of warriors.
So difficult to talk about mass incarceration because it has become heavily monetized.
Warriors who serve the good and the light in the universe.
That's some of her work. And when you look at this clash over history at the Smithsonian, we reach for a wise political observer and writer, George Orwell, who famously warned, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. I'll leave that up for a second, because what he meant was, by controlling our understanding of history, you can control politics of the future. And of course, if you have power today, you might control that past. We've all heard the term Orwellian. And what's happening at the Smithsonian, because I took a look at the administration's arguments, as we always do, to see if they have merit, to see what examples they had. But their example was that accurate history about racial oppression itself, they say, should be removed.
Yes. I mean, I actually take great solace in actually reading these executive orders, because their level of absurdity actually calms me. It reminds me that we're being gaslit. It reminds me about the chaos that is being stirred through the very language to say that there's a restoration of truth and sanity. And then when you actually read that order, it is it's laughable. And to do that helps me kind of cut through the emotion of it. Because I'm an artist, I'm an emotional person, to really kind of pierce through that and look for what's real within it. And what's real in these documents is history. It comes to life in the executive orders because within the executive orders, we are reminded of that same language in the past and how that turned out. And so by actually reading it myself, not just, getting a synopsis or a summary on the news, I felt fortified in the fact that what we're hearing is nonsense and really trying to create some steps forward for myself as an artist and the people around me.
I like that. I like what you're kind of reminding us, which is it can be upsetting or befuddling, but sometimes just actually taking it in and saying, oh, that's how thin the argument is, and there's still a world out here of people who care about facts, history, and the arts, which brings us to you being honored tomorrow, which is one of our hooks for getting you back tonight. What does that mean to you? What's tomorrow about for you?
I think it's grown in importance to me since I heard about it, and obviously deeply honored. But as the institution has been under fire, I feel like they could have probably made a much easier choice, another choice that might not have raised eyebrows. Certainly, I've been vocal about my feelings about the administration, and they've held strong to their selection of me for this honor. So I commend them. I thank Dr. Lonnie Bunch and all the good people at the Smithsonian overall and the National Museum of American History. And so, yes, I'm excited to be there. I certainly know that the folks that run these institutions who care deeply about justice and dignity are under fire. And so these are allies who need to know that artists stand in solidarity with them. So I'm proud to be there tomorrow night.
Yeah, tomorrow. Speak on the influence and the power of culture, because it's something we've taken an interest in here on The Beat. And I don't know what it means when people meet up on it, but at a certain point you say, if this film or this song, right, has all these fans and people love it, and then it has all these opponents and enemies who hate it. They hate it so much they don't want it to exist. To me, that sometimes reinforces that culture is powerful. And when we look at the many American traditions, but which includes a lot of homemade Black art that seems to matter, or even, I should say numerically, might punch above its weight, the weight of jazz or blues above its numerical representation, right? What do you see there at a time like this?
Well, jazz and blues and African-American art over-indexes from its origins to its echoing and reverberations through the culture. But overall, the impact of art on the culture is priceless. It's seismic. And that is why it's under fire. If you can shut up the artists, if you can make us look away from history, then you do, as the quote that you stated before, you do control minds, you control the moment. And so what is important is for artists to continue to create. All art is homemade and handmade. It's heart-made. And it comes from someone who expresses their point of view about the human condition. And whether that's political, cultural, whether it's about your lineage, whether it's about what's happening in the White House, it's coming from a deep place of human expression. It must be. It's different than news. It's different than anything that is objective, because art is deeply emotional. It's
better than news. I'll tell you that.
I'm not going there, Ari, but we can battle if you want. But it all has its place, and I think, for me, as a student of history, I know there's so many examples of moments where art has really lifted the national mood when it's actually propelled us forward. And we're back to that place, and it's important that we continue to do our work.
I have a question for you about political projection, and then we saved a little time to talk Met Gala, so we can end on a high note. But, it's always interesting with projection because, we try to be fair here. We talk to a lot of folks. I've had Trump folks on the show, and I'll have them back on the show. But the political projection I see is a part of the MAGA right saying, you guys are obsessed with race. You're obsessed with identity. You're fixated. And then you go and you look at these orders and you look at the targeting and you look at what's going on and you go, I'm sorry, who's obsessed? There's more than one way to do diversity recruitment. America's had a multi-decade debate about recruitment, affirmative action programs. You can look at the Fortune 100 and say, It's still 90% male CEOs, give or take. Does that seem right, or are we getting something wrong? We can debate it. But the whole obsessive thing, I wanted to ask you about that. And the headline from The Atlantic on the threats to the African American History Museum, which talks about how black resistance has always existed, the exhibit reminding people that existence is possible now, which is the exact sort of thing that's led authoritarian regimes to scrub examples of political resistance. What do you think of that projection issue?
Well, that's the wonderful piece by Clint Smith in The Atlantic. If you haven't read it, folks should. The idea that what I'm often called online by the trolls and I imagine young men in their mother's basements sitting in their briefs, is a race baiter. But when you look at the executive orders and you look at almost every time Trump or the blonde woman who is at the podium doing something in the press room, she thinks, speaks, they're talking about race. This administration is obsessed with race. That whole side of things is obsessed with race. This is part of the gaslighting, whether it's immigration, whether it's black folks, it's brown folks, it's Muslims, it's people in the Middle East. It's this idea that the other is
everyone else.
Is everyone else, and so.
No, I promised the photos. So this is the TV thing where I'm going to put them up just so we see. I know you were at the Met Gala.
I know you're not cutting me off talking about race to show these gowns. Sorry.
I mean,
okay.
Hey, it's your time. You get 45 seconds. We do have the photos.
This is a garment that is made as a replica, a bedazzled replica of something that my great-grandmother Annie Fisher wore in a portrait in 1999.